You're listening to School Counseling Simplified, a podcast with easy-to-implement strategies for busy school counselors. Here's your host, Rachel Davis from Bright Futures Counseling.
I get asked all the time what to do. New counselors say, what am I supposed to be doing? What am I supposed to plan next? How do I run this group? How do I teach this lesson? And I know how you feel. I mean, this profession doesn't really come with an instruction manual, and we definitely didn't learn all of this in grad school. So over the years, I've developed curriculum plans and resources to support students, and those are the things that you'll see, in my TPT store and on my blog, and that's how I'd love serving you guys. But I decided I needed something more too. I wanted to really support you guys more and build an awesome community. So that's why I created Impact, my school counselor membership program. So each month, our members receive monthly curriculum plans, ready-to-download resources, and video implementation guides. So they have everything they need to best support students and to make their counseling lives just a little bit easier. In addition, I deliver quarterly live professional development trainings. We have a fun and active Facebook group where we all hang out and collaborate and do fun giveaways and challenges. An essential resource library full of resources that you may need all year long, like a grief group or divorce discussion cards. And the best part, our community live chats. So we do Facebook Live and Zoom calls every month where we all get together, kind of like a round table, troubleshoot tough cases, pick each other's brains. It's a lot of fun. So if this sounds like something you need or something you're interested in, send me a message on Instagram at Bright Futures Counseling or head over to stressfreeschoolcounseling.com/impact. Okay, let's go to the show. Hey there, how are you guys? I hope you are having an awesome week. Today, I'm going to talk to you some more about anxiety, specifically about how we can use it during those Tier 1 interventions, those preventative class lessons. But before that, I have a couple reminders for you. First up, please don't forget to submit your counselor stories. So remember, we have a Google form, the link is in the show notes, where you can just upload a quick, casual audio of you sharing something funny or meaningful or interesting that happened to you during your counseling life. So something a student said or something cool that worked with your group that you loved and something finally clicked with a student. It can literally be anything about counseling. I just want to hear from real school counselors who are doing it day to day so I can feature you guys on the podcast. I think it's going to be really refreshing and fun to hear from all kinds of different people from all over the place. So head to the link in the show notes. I would love to hear your counselor story. And if you're listening to this on Tuesday, March 8th, the day that it airs, then this is a reminder that it is the last day to join us inside Impact, in time to join all of the fun celebration and giveaways. So it is our 1-year anniversary of my Impact School Counselor membership program, and all of our members are getting all kinds of fun stuff this month. We're doing big celebration stuff, and all of it starts this week. So if you join by today, then you will be right in time to receive all of the fun goodies and giveaways and prizes. So I just wanted to remind you, today's the last day that you can get in, so you can get all of the fun stuff. Okay, let's dive in. So like I said, I want to talk about anxiety. If you didn't listen to last week's episode, it was kind of the introduction episode on anxiety. And I, defined anxiety, talked about the differences between, typical anxiety and then anxiety disorders. So it's a really interesting listen. I reference a lot of outside sources and you can follow up and, read into it a little more. I encourage you to start there. But today I want to talk to you about your SEL class lessons. So if you're anything like me, you likely have helped students with anxiety in the individual setting the most, maybe a couple small groups, but I doubt you're doing a lot of it at the class lesson level. Now, I love the class lesson level. I love all parts of counseling, honestly. Groups are my favorite, you guys know this, and then individual counseling is so powerful and so awesome to make those connections. Last month on the podcast, we talked all about individual counseling, so head back to those episodes if you haven't yet. But class lessons are awesome too. They're all awesome for different reasons. And the thing about class lessons is they're so inspiring to me because they're so preventative. Like, I'm getting in there and I'm planting a seed and I'm helping students learn something that they can then use, going forward. Instead of being reactive and trying to solve something that's already an issue, it's a preventative way to kind of get ahead of it. And it's a great way to show face and hang out with students that you don't typically see. So, big fan of class lessons over here. I want to give you 3 ideas of things that you can do in a class lesson to help teach students about anxiety and how they can manage their anxiety. Okay, so first up I have for you to explain the brain. So what I mean by that is tell students what's happening in their brain during an anxious moment or while they're experiencing anxiety. The way I love to explain this is through the thinking brain and the worry brain. Or if you're with older students, you can use the terminology prefrontal cortex and amygdala. Actually, I encourage you to use the correct terminology regardless of the student age. Why not, right? They know all kinds of words. They can learn the word amygdala. Confession, I did not know what an amygdala was until college, which is crazy, which is why I'm passionate about teaching it to elementary school students. But I was in my intro to psychology class, I think, or it might have even been a different class. It was a class, oh my goodness, what was the name of that class? Anyways, it was an upper level psychology class talking about the brain structures and how they directly relate to psychology. And the professor actually had a podcast. How innovative of him at the time. We're talking like 2009. And he actually had a podcast where he would like talk about different things and we could subscribe and listen. So in retrospect, that was pretty cool, right? But anyways, I sadly didn't know what an amygdala was until then. And I read it several times. I guess I wasn't listening to his podcast. I read it several times before I heard it said aloud. And I was calling it like a amygdala or something, like completely wrong pronunciation. It's always funny when that happens. One of my best girlfriends, she, the other day we were having a conversation and she was like, yeah, and then this opossum came. And I'm like, excuse me, do you mean opossum? She had only read it and had never heard the word said aloud, city girl. And it was, she thought the O was not silent, literally said opossum. Very educated, intelligent woman. Hilarious. Okay. I would love to hear those stories. Add one of those in your counselor stories of a time that you've said something wrong because you've only ever read it. It's happened to me many times. At least we're avid readers, right? Okay, I super digress. Back to class lessons. We want students to understand what's happening in their brain. So we can introduce this as the prefrontal cortex, also called the thinking brain, and the amygdala, called the worry brain. And basically, we're telling them they have a thinking brain that helps them make decisions and problem solve. And then they have a worry brain, and that's the flight, fight, or freeze response, and that's when they feel scared or threatened. Now, it's important to show the students the two types of the brain so they can understand that it's like one or the other is working, right? The amygdala kind of hijacks the brain. So you can't use your thinking brain properly, and you can't think rationally and make clear decisions and problem solve if your amygdala is activated. So when we are feeling anxious or panicked or scared, our amygdala is activated. And when the amygdala takes over, as you know, we have a physical response. You're sweating, your heart's beating, and you can't think rationally at all. And it's not your fault. It's literally your biochemistry makeup, right? And of course, this has happened, for a reason. Our brains were designed this way, probably because back in the day, we needed that amygdala to run away from a threat, a physical threat like a jaguar or something coming after us. But today, we don't have so many jaguars, but we do have things like tests or friendship problems or parents fighting, or these are things that your students are worried with right now or they're feeling anxious about, right? And those things are hijacking their brain and it's causing them not to be able to learn at school. So I love talking to kids about this because they likely have never heard it. You can simplify it as much as necessary for your little learners, or dig deep with the older guys. Have them ask questions. You can look at some pictures of the brain and then see if they can kind of make a connection to their life on when this has happened to them, for when they were thinking irrationally, but they literally couldn't help it because they were in this other state. So it's really interesting. I love to do a maze through the brain, because the brain has all the squiggles. You can find some cool clip art online, have them do a little maze. You can make it fun. But I think it's really important and often overlooked when we're talking with kids about what's actually happening in their brain. There's nothing wrong with you if you're anxious. It's just your brain, and it's how our bodies work, right? So just like we would teach very matter-of-factly in a health class about the body, I think we should do the same thing with the brain. So that's the first strategy I have for you when teaching anxiety in a class lesson. Now next up, you can do a think, pair, share, or a share circle. So now that students know about the brain and know about how anxiety works, they can make the connection to their everyday life. So you can put them into pairs and have them ask one another, talk about a time that you felt anxious. How did it make you feel? How did your body react? Of course, you can put these prompts on the board, but have them have those discussions. And you can think about the class you're working with and what you think will work best. So if you think the one-on-one pair would be best for getting students to open up more, you can do that. Or if you want, you can have everyone sit in a circle, roll a ball, and talk about it that way as well. Of course, you always want to do like a little confidentiality reminder at the beginning so students feel open and like it's a safe space to share. And the third thing that you can do during a class lesson, so you can do these all in one lesson. You can start by explaining the brain, then do your share circle, and then you can end with coping strategies. So now we've talked about feeling anxious, and they're like, cool, we know we're anxious, what do we do now? That's where we want to introduce those coping strategies. So I love to do charades. It's always a fun one to do with a big class. So have volunteers come up, grab a card that's a coping strategy, and then they act it out and the class tries to guess. So this could be something like exercising, taking deep breaths, reading a book, listening to music, talking to a friend, coloring mandalas, making a calm down bottle, all kinds of stuff. Obviously, some of these are going to be easier to act out and guess, and some are going to be more difficult. And that's what makes the charades game fun. You could also do role play. So if you have a big class, like 25 or 30, you can break them up into smaller groups and then have the groups do a role play of like come up with a little skit explaining an anxious situation and how that student's going to react. And you could have some kids do ones that are like inappropriate reactions and then some that are coping strategies reactions. It's fun to get a mix going. And then I have a resource that I wanted to bring to your attention that may be helpful in a class lesson, and it is my worry and anxiety boom cards. So I love using boom cards in class lessons because you can just project them on the board, and then you can ask students the questions and they can answer, and you click in real time because they're self-grading. They're really fun to use. Or you could even have students like come up to the board and physically touch it as you click it. That's kind of fun. That way we can get them physically moving even though we're using a digital activity. But this worry and anxiety activity focuses specifically on what's in their control. So is this in my control or not? And I'll read you some examples. So it would say things like, what can I control? My reactions, the weather, or the bus being late. Obviously, your reactions you can control, even though you can't control those other things. And I love to have these kind of conversations while I'm doing the cards, so then talk to them about it. Has that ever happened to you? How did you react? And then the inverse, what can't I control? What I focus on, my goals, or the future. And in that case, the future is something that they cannot control. And that's something that makes a lot of kiddos anxious. They then go on to talk about stressors that you can and cannot avoid as well. So those are some fun boom cards if you're looking for something digital or, really low prep to use in a class lesson as well. Okay, guys, I hope you found that helpful. I hope you can try out these strategies in a class lesson. I would love to see them. If you do, take some pics, tag me on Instagram at Bright Futures Counseling, or just share with me how you're using anxiety. Hey, you could even share it in your counselor story, how you are using these strategies to teach anxiety during your class counseling lessons. Also, remember, this is the last day that you can sign up for Impact to take advantage of our special annual celebrations. We're celebrating the Impact birthday over there in our group, and members are going to get a lot of perks. So if you join now, you can get in on the perks too. Go to stressfreeschoolcounseling.com/impact to check it out, and I will talk to you next week.
Thanks for listening to School Counseling Simplified. You can find the links from today's episode in the show notes. If you'd like to connect with Rachel, she's on Instagram and Teachers Pay Teachers at Bright Futures Counseling. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss any episodes of School Counseling Simplified. Talk to you next week.